If you're in Pakistan, the Indians, right? Because they didn't make hijrah or whatever, I don't know. I mean, they see them as less, right? If you're from Hyderabad, right? I'm a Hyderabadi, and so there's some Hyderabadis, they think because they're from Hyderabad, they're automatically better than the rest of the Indians, just by being from Hyderabad, right? So this is like nasab and hasab and things like that. Americans, very common, we're number one. Because they're from America, they're number one. If you go into Hausa land, Hausas are convinced that they're a superior race, right? Many Hausa people feel that they're better than, certainly better than Yoruba and Igbo, and probably better than the Fulani. But the Fulani will see themselves as better than the Hausa. If you go to Mauritania, the Kunta will see themselves as better than the Masuma. Or, if you're from Tajikistan, you're naturally better than... And this is a disease. It's a human disease, widespread affliction. The Damascans deem themselves better than the Halabis. Right? And a Shami. They even call Damascus Sham. They won't even let anybody else be a Shami. Right? So, this is a problem. This is a disease in the heart. Deeming yourself better simply because of some quality that you have. Like the quality of being from Damascus, or the quality of being a Najdi. Right? The Najdis will deem themselves better than the Hijazis. Right? They call them akhlaf al-hujjaj. And often in their language you'll see all this type of arrogance. Right? In this culture they have a lot of these type terms. A lot of racist terminology. But you'll find them in all cultures. You'll find them in all cultures. And this is takabbur. Because Allah says, Inna akramakum indallah atqakum. The best of you with Allah are the people of taqwa. And what this does is deludes you into thinking that somebody doesn't have taqwa simply because he can't. How could he have taqwa? He's a Hindi, or he's a Nigeri, or he's whatever. Mm-hmm.
What about the people, I know the modern phenomenon, who have takabbur because they're from Ahlul Bayt?
No, that's not a modern phenomenon. That goes way back. Yeah, I mean, there's people who are sada and they have takabbur. They're human beings, They're human beings. People who are from the family of the Prophet ﷺ, I mean, of all things to have takabbur for, that's a pretty good one. I mean, I'd put that up there with... In nasab, that's number one. Do you know what I mean? And that's the danger, because sometimes these things do have validity. And this is the danger of it. Right? In other words, there is something to be said about being from the family of the Prophet. It's a great honor. But there are many hadiths that put fear in your heart. The Prophet ﷺ, there's a hadith that says his nasab benefits. But there's a hadith that says, إِذَا أَبْطَأَكُمُ الْعَمَلْ لَا يُسْرَعُكُمُ النَّسَبِ. If your actions hold you back, your nasab, your lineage won't speed you up. Right? In other words, if you have nasab, if you don't have action to go with it, it's not going to get you anywhere. No fuel. Good car, no gas. Right? So if you're a Sharif, it's a Mercedes, but the action is still gasoline. You're not going anywhere. Right? You have to put something in there. So that's a real serious one. And there are many hadiths warning us about the danger of it. Now, how you cure yourself, one of the cures is to recognize, first of all, what are you from? And your source, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, right, that you are from ma'in mahin, a vile fluid. Your source is a vile fluid. One of them said that somebody كان يتكبر, and one of the Salaf, he said, Subhanallah, يحمل بين جنبيه العذرة, he's carrying between his two sides a bunch of feces. Right? I mean, in other words, where's the takabbur? Where's the source of the takabbur? That he's just a bag of blood like everybody else. Right? And, they have crude colloquials in this culture that I won't go into. But, I mean, people do have, in every culture, they recognize. Nobody likes takabbur. Right? The problem is the mutakabbir does not see his takabbur. And that's why he hates even to somebody to be mutakabbir alayh. Which is why takabburu عند المتكبر عبادة. التكبر في وجه المتكبر عبادة. It's a hadith that to be arrogant with somebody who's arrogant is a type of ibadah. So, and this is what we call throwing it back in their face. You know, you give them a little taste of it. And as a cure, it should be done as a dawa, just to let them see how it feels. Mm-hmm.
What if you're, let's say you've done a whole lot of righteous things and you feel that you're a righteous person, so therefore when you get reward for your righteousness, you want to draw other people's attention to that so that they understand that.
That's kibrun. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big problem. And this is what, if you feel you're a righteous person, that's kibr. Right away, off the bat. If you feel you're righteous, you're in a state of kibr. And that's why if you look at the early people, they were people who really, one of the companions of Abu Hanifa, somebody was sitting with him and he moved his foot, and the man moved his foot away out of respect, out of deference. He said, "Why did you do that?" He said, "Out of deference." He said, "Li mithli?" You know, for somebody like me. And he said, "Wallahi la ara ahad huna ashar minni." I don't see anybody in this gathering worse than me. And that's the way those people were. You know, it wasn't a joke. They really did see themselves as... and that's why, look at Sayyidina Ali. It's a sound hadith. Sayyidina Ali, a man asked him, who's better, you or Abu Bakr? He said, Abu Bakr. He said, then, what about you and Umar? He said, Umar. And then he said, I didn't want to say Uthman, because I was worried he'd say Uthman, so I just said, what about you? He said, Ma ana illa rajul min al-muslimin. I'm just a Muslim man. No claim, no maqam. And that's not, you can say that's humble. For us, it's humility looking at it. But for the imam, he's not thinking, I better say in order for me to be humble. Right? No, seriously, that's a disease in itself. Ibn Ata'illah says, if you're aware of your humility, you're mutakabbir. And that's why, right, Uriah Heep. You know that character? Dickens? He's an amazing character. In David Copperfield, right? David Copperfield? Uriah Heep. Oh, in my very humble opinion, sir. You know, he's a complete hypocrite. But he's always, in my humble opinion, sir. You know, and he's always doing this thing of being, Uriah Heep. I know I'm nothing in society, sir, but in my humble opinion, and meanwhile he's stealing all their money and he's doing all these, so it's a character. What do you mean by being aware of your humility? In other words, if you think that you're humble, you're mutakabbir. Because you're looking at your humility from a place of height. I mean, humility means to be low. So if you can see how low you are, you can only see it from some from some higher place. It's takabbur. We're diseased. We just have to deal with it. And this is why our scholars, Jazakumullahu khairan, they said, if you're not like the real people, at least pretend to be like them. Seriously, because there's even some benefit in faking it. And even the Imam says that it's better to fake humility than to be an outright mutakabbir. And that's very clear. One of the things that Imam al-Ghazali radiallahu anhu says is that if you want to learn how to master calligraphy, you go to the master calligrapher and you repeat what he does over and over again. And it's totally unnatural for you, but eventually you will become a master calligrapher. And it's interesting, my sister went to a brain, this neurosurgeon in Stanford, and one of the things he said is that the brain learns by repetition. And those things that you do most consistently with repetition, become completely embedded in the brain, like driving. What he said is that most people drive in a completely subconscious state. They're unaware of their driving. And this is the idea of being unaware of your humility, that it's just part of your nature. It's not something you're faking. If you're faking it, you're aware of it. Whereas when it's genuine, the brain is not conscious of it. So when you drive, because when you first start out driving, the best drivers, right, are often people that haven't become good drivers because they're so nervous. These poor people that learn with the thing on the top of the car, they're like blinker and they're looking around, they're really fearful. But then there's people driving down, listening to the singing and doing all this stuff, thinking about all these things, talking on the cellular phone, and they're the ones that get into the accident, right? Because it's become, the driving is completely, they're doing it. Now what this neurologist said, that the interesting thing about stroke people that lose their brains, and people that go into dementia, often they will retain things that they did most repetitiously. In other words, they can still drive, even though they forgot how to do everything else. Because the brain it was so repetition, the pathways are so fixed in the neurology of the brain that they're still able to do that. And this is the idea of repetition. إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمِ Ta'allum, you do it bit-tikrar, over and over again. You have to force yourself to be humble until it really does become your nature. Because most people don't have these things naturally. We're diseased. If we weren't, we wouldn't be studying any of the things we're studying, right? Seriously, that's why we're studying this, because we all recognize it in ourselves. All of us. So that's the... Now the fourth one is at-tafakhur bil-jamal, kibr because of beauty. And one of the cures for that is it's the old adage, beauty is only skin deep. Beauty is an illusion, right? First of all, you don't retain your beauty. Everybody loses it ultimately. Second of all, Allah gave it to you. It's not something that you earned or something like that. So have mutakabbir because of beauty is a very superficial type of takabbur, and it's really a stupidity. And the other thing that I find really fascinating is there was a study done on beautiful people, and what they found is that beautiful people were actually average. They did all these pictures and looked at them and found what people were identifying as beautiful, and they found actually people in this culture, beauty is an average. It's a mean when it's all put together in one face. So it's an average nose, average eyes, average mouth, but they're all put together on the same face. I thought that was so amazing, that beautiful people are average looking, right? It's a mean. And that's the idea, خَيْرُ الْأُمُورِ أَوْسَطُهَا. I mean, there's a truth to it, right? That median, there's something, a great deal to be said for it. So it's just a foolish type thing to do that. And there's a very frightening hadith about Aisha radiallahu anhu, in which a woman came in and the Prophet ﷺ asked who it was, and she indicated the short one. And the Prophet ﷺ said, اغتبتها. That's backbiting. And the ulama say the reason is because it was takabbur. Because in other words, had she not seen her height, that she was taller than she was. And so there was a type of takabbur there, which is actually quite frightening, because that's an i'jab, right? Mu'jab bi qamatiha or bi qawliha, right? And then she sees the other one. So the Prophet ﷺ rebuked her for that. The fifth one is kibr bil mal. And this happens with kings, with all their storehouses, and merchants with their commodities. And also people who own a lot of land, or people who own a lot of clothes and horses or cars now. And they look down on poor people, or even rich people that are less rich than them. Like Helmsley, that woman who said about taxes, only the little people pay taxes. And I read an interview, it was a really fascinating interview with one of these, I can't remember even who it was, one of these famous, what they call beautiful people in this culture. And they were on a helicopter going up on a ski place. And they were like, the place down below was a ski lodge for less wealthy people. And they were having a private helicopter take them up the mountain. And this woman said she looked down and somebody said at that point, "Oh, look at all the little people down there." And right at that point, the helicopter tipped over. And they actually crashed. But the point is, she got the message. I mean, some people wouldn't see that, that be very careful about how you look at other people, right? Because we're all little people, right? It's what the guy, the homeless on the street looks up at the CEO, and the CEO is looking down saying, "Look at all the little people." And the homeless guy's up there, "Look at that little guy up there." It's all perspective, right? It's all just perspective. So we're all little people, and that's why the mutakabbirun are turned into ants. Because they looked at everybody else like they were ants that could be crushed. Right? It's a very dangerous thing. And then another one is the quwwa, kibr bil quwwa wal batsh. Somebody who's very strong, like Rakana, the Musari'. When he told the Prophet ﷺ, "Wrestle me," the Prophet threw him twice. He still didn't become Muslim, right? And then there's a riwayah that he did. Inshallah, he did. I don't know, but the point is that he saw nobody could throw him. He said, "I've never been thrown ever." Takabbur, right? So this idea of somebody who's strong, have muscles, and the amazing thing, they're going to get old, right? Right? Then they can't do it. Now the seventh one is takabbur bil atba' wal ansar wal talamida wal ghilman, and by having a lot, like a teacher who has a lot of students, and so he sees himself as better than another teacher who has less students. So, somebody who has a lot of friends, somebody who has a lot of powerful relatives, influential people, right? Somebody who's from the royal family. He's not the king, but he's from the royal family. Mutakabbir because of strength, but it has to do with more like that type of jah and things like that. Very dangerous one. Now, of all of these, and then also takabbur because of knowledge, which really is the most, according to the Imam, he says it's one of the most insidious, because again, like being a sharif, having knowledge is so honored. And having knowledge, the nature of knowledge is that people respect knowledge. Many people are often in awe of knowledge. So when somebody does have knowledge, especially if it's a good deal of knowledge, then people will show them deference. And so it becomes dangerous for the heart, because they'll start thinking, "I'm somebody. I'm important." And this is what shaitan will do to them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, قُتِلِ الْإِنسَانُ مَا أَكْفَرَ مِنْ أَيِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَ. How man has been killed. مَا أَكْفَرَهُ. What is more of an ingrate than man? And then Allah says, مِنْ أَيِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَ. What did we create him from? Let man think about what we created him from. He came from a fluid. He didn't even exist before that fluid. هَلْ أَتَىٰ عَلَى الْإِنسَانِ حِينٌ مِنَ الدَّهْرِ لَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْئًا مَذْكُورًا. He wasn't even a thing that anybody had on their tongue. 50 years 50 years ago, you weren't even an idea in your parents' mind. Right? You were nothing, non-existent. And then you came into existence. And when you first came into existence, changing diapers 7, 8 times a day. That's all they do. They just defecate, urinate, sleep, and cry every once in a while. Right? And suckle at the breast. That's it. It's unbelievable. Complete. That's human being. And then they grow up, and get to a point where they have strength and they become arrogant. And then they're going to go because it's curvilinear. If you live long enough, you'll end up where you started. Right? You reach that 40-year point, and that's, people think, right? I'm at the top, everything's going right. And then Allah says, مِن نُطْفَةٍ خَلَقَهُ فَقَدَّرَ. He created him from a nutfa, this fluid, ejaculated fluid that Allah made. فَقَدَّرَهُ. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He measured out everything for him. Man didn't do that for himself. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَوَلَمْ يَرَى الْإِنسَانِ أَنَّا خَلَقْنَاهُ مِن نُطْفَةٍ فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ. Hasn't man thought about it? We created him from a nutfa, and now he's this manifest enemy of ours. Right? Allah, it's amazing. Allah made the human being, and then he goes into rebellion against Allah. And he's nothing. Right? Allah can stir up it's a storm in what do they call it? A hurricane in a teacup. Hurricane Mitch. It's nothing. Nothing, it's just nothing. Little wind in one part of the planet, in our solar system, in the midst of a universe. It's nothing. And yet, for those people that were hit by it, it's completely devastated. All these people lose their houses, their wealth, everything gone from a wind that Allah sent. And Allah says that in the Quran, when they see the wind, they'll say, هَذَا عَارِضٌ مُمْطِرُنَا. Oh, this is a good wind coming to give us some rain. And it's an adab. So human beings, the point of all of this is we're just fools to be in rebellion against Allah. And Allah says, أَلَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُ عَيْنَيْنِ وَلِسَانًا وَشَفَتَيْنِ وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ. We gave him a tongue, we gave him 2 eyes, we gave him this ability to think, all these things. And then we guided him and showed him 2 roads. And we told him, at the end of this road is a painful punishment. And at the end of this road is a reward. And you choose. And people choose to go down this other, and it's takabbur. And you can look at the seerah. I guarantee you look at every single one of those people that refused to submit, it was all takabbur. It's very clear. The reason people can't submit is takabbur. And if you look at the prayer, the amazing thing about the prayer, and I mentioned this before, there's a type of slavishness in the prayer that some people find very offensive. And there are Western people that have a really hard time with the concept of being a slave of God. Abdullah. They have a real problem with that concept. Because they have this idea, I'm free. But then he's a slave to his private parts, his stomach, right? His petty goals in life. He's a slave to all these things. He can't control them. He's a complete slave to them. But a slave to Allah? No. I'll be a slave to my genitals, but I won't be a slave to Allah. I'll be a slave to my stomach, but I won't be a slave to Allah. So it's a completely delusional state that the human being goes into. And that's where it is. So he's saying that the way to get rid of this disease is first knowing your Lord and knowing yourself. Now obviously that is a big task. Some of them say the only way you can know your Lord is to know yourself. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. In your own selves, don't you see? So Allah tells us to reflect on ourselves. If you reflect on the self, what you come to realize is that you're completely bound. You are abd. And even Masih ibn Maryam, right? He was not arrogant to say that he was Abdullah. He accepted that he was Abdullah. Right? He accepted that. So even the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ana sayyidu waldi Adam wala fakhra." I am the best of the children of Adam, and I'm not boasting. Wala fakhra. So that was not takabbur. The ulama say the reason he said that is he was making sure that the Sahaba did not understand from that he was yatakabbar alayhim bi siyadatihi. Because that's what the Jahili Arabs used to do. Ana sayyidukum. They would make takabbur. He was doing it because he was commanded by Allah to inform them of that. And that's why he said, wala fakhra. I'm not doing this out of fakhr. But the ulama take from that another ishara that not only was there was no fakhr, but His fakhar was in his ubudiyyah to Allah. It wasn't in his siyada of creation, that he was the master of creation. It was that he was the most perfect slave of Allah. That was where his honor and glory was. Right? Which is why there's a hadith, some people don't accept it, but Mullah Ali al-Qari said it, the meaning is true. Faqri fakhri. My impoverishment before Allah is my glory. Right? So, knowing yourself, knowing that, and feeling that whoever knows those two is humbled and feels insignificant. يتواضع ويهون. And من تواضع لله رفعه Allah. Whoever is humbled for the sake of Allah, Allah raises him up. Allah will raise him up. من تواضع لله رفعه Allah. Right? So, that idea of being low for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says also another thing, مقامه ينفي مقام الشكر, that the station of kibr negates the possibility of showing gratitude to Allah. Because the way you show gratitude to Allah is through ubudiyyah. And if you're mutakabbir, you're not an abd. Because the abd by his nature can't be mutakabbir. That's why he's abd. The abd by his nature cannot be mutakabbir. And therefore, you can't be a shakur to Allah if you're mutakabbir. It's impossible. So he's saying it negates it altogether. And then he says, كَمَا تَوَاضُعُ لَهُ ذُو جَرِّ. The nature of humility is that it takes you to gratitude. Because when you are in a state that's humbled before Allah, everything you see it in its right perspective. That Allah has been so generous to you, that Allah has given you so much, that you don't deserve it, you're undeserving of it. And that feeling of undeserving engenders in you a feeling of gratitude. Because if you feel you deserve something, like the Moroccans say, La shukr ala al-wajib. There's no thanks for something that you deserve. Right? If you feel that this is my wajib, then that by its nature does not engender in you a sense of gratitude towards the person. You just feel like, la atani ma huwa haqqi. He just gave me my right. You see, so you have to, once you understand that and recognize you are undeserving. And that's why he's saying, haqqirhu. You know, this big mountain of kibr, see it for what it is. It's insignificant, meaningless. And when you do that, you'll bring it down. You'll bring that down. And Allah, we say Allahu Akbar. And that's why even traditionally the Muslims, anytime they saw something in somebody or somebody that, MashaAllah, take it back to its source. Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater. It's a reminder constantly. Allahu Akbaru minni, Allahu Akbaru minkum, Allahu Akbar min ad-dunya wa ma fiha. Allahu Akbar. Right? And He's al-Kabir al-Muta'ali. And one of the things He says to the mutakabbir, ذُقْ إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. Now you taste, you're the Aziz now. Right? You're this one. So taste the punishment. Tahakkur in Quran. So, the last thing here is dhul and da'a. Now, oh, you have to prepare for it? Alright. So we'll do that next week. If you're